Hi, I'm the glow-in-the-dark staff that came with your figure, but the package didn't say glow-in-the-dark and you didn't find out until 20 years later. Andrew, and this is Gatey's Toys, but more specifically, this is MIA 80s Ladies, which is a series of posts I've done on Instagram where we kind of do a deep dive on a lot of the women who appeared in cartoons and other media during our favorite franchises of the 80s and even 90s that were never made and were probably never going to be made. So this is going to be a bit of a history lesson, a bit of a list of assumptions we're going to have to make strictly because there isn't a lot of information available. And then we can you can always come back to this as a refresher and as a point where we can use shorthand in future videos. So without further ado, let's get started. The first bit of housekeeping is that I don't work in the toy industry. This is all research I have done, so I don't know how things worked in the 80s and 90s. I certainly don't know how they work now in the toy company. I do, however, know that I have worked in large corporations all of my adult life, and I've seen the sexism that does exist, so we're going to do a lot of inferring from here on out. Another note of contention that I'm going to probably fail at is that I don't love the term female action figures or female character. It's clinical, it's icky. I don't love it, but the fact is I'm going to let it slip. It is in the vernacular, it is very common, it is what it is. So I'm going to try my best. However, let's call them women. Let's do that. Now, when it comes to the history of women as action figures, the best place to start would be the first action figure line, that being G.I. Joe. The first woman in that line was almost stereotypically a nurse. She was called G.I. Nurse Action Girl, and she was not Barbie in a nurse's outfit. She was deserving of love, let's just say that. That said, her accessories, spectacular. From there on out, you have to understand that movies were in theaters for a very long time, but they weren't available to home video. So often, a lot of toy lines were based off of comic books or TV shows. So you would see a lot of things like Hot Lips and MASH, or Daisy Duke from Dukes of Hazzard. And again, Mego, the real powerhouse in the 70s, would do Wonder Woman, Uhura, real classics like that. But the rule generally was that if there was a woman of import in a story, she was made into a figure. Since we're in the 70s, it's a good little time to have a sidebar on two things that the toy companies are just obsessed with, and that is some mystery study about gendering toys and the notion that there's, just no room for female figures. Female figures don't sell. First off is this study where essentially they brought in some boys and girls and tried to discover how they played. And to their amazement, they discovered that girls like to nurture and do dull hair play. Boys like to smash things together and just be overly aggressive. This study, I can't find anything about it. I can't find the origins of it. I don't know who funded it. I don't know where it came from. I've seen plenty of studies debunking it, but I don't know what the study is. However, this is the study that a lot of toy companies are known for pointing at. And my best guess is that it would have been around maybe the 70s, maybe the 80s, no later than that. And I gotta tell you, I have questions. I have questions about the demographics of these kids. Like, what was their socioeconomic standpoint? What was the age range? Geographically, where were these kids from? Racially, who were these kids? I mean, if I were to guess, these were just, company kids from Beverly Hills who were brought down to play toys, and to their astonishment, turned out to be sexist pigs. So I gotta tell you, if the study was to prove that rich white kids from Beverly Hills were sociopaths and sexist, I could have saved you some money. The other notion is that female figures don't sell. I'm gonna guess again that this probably started in the 70s, possibly the 80s. Again, you've used it, I've used it. We have no evidence to support this. We don't have the data, we don't have the analytics. The fact of the matter is, though, I've worked in large companies, and even if people do have said data, no one knows how to analyze it. No one knows what to extract from it. And no one even generally touches it. So I'm not sure where this came from, but I'm pretty sure, like the study, this has not been sort of challenged or rethought about since. And again, I have some questions. I mean, where are these numbers coming from? Is it from retailers? Is it from internal? Is it, who's doing what with what? The other notion is, let's just do a thought experiment. What if you walk into a Ross, you see a bunch of Marvel Legends on a shelf? You've got Age of Apocalypse Wolverine, you've got that Paladin guy, and you've got Deadpool's girlfriend Shikla. Notorious peg warmers. Is your takeaway that female figures don't sell? Or is it that male figures don't sell? Because that's clearly what's being demonstrated there. Is it that Wolverine figures don't sell? Because that seems counterintuitive. And again, I think people sort of zero in on the girl. She didn't sell because she's on the shelf. So were the other two guys. That, of course, changed when Star Wars came out. And I'm not the one who's going to tell you how it changed everything. But there's, you can go on YouTube, go find out for yourself. That said, all the other toy companies were trying to catch up to what Kenner was doing, including what became really the trinity of early 80s toys, which would have been He-Man, Transformers, G.I. Joe. He-Man and G.I. Joe, spectacular job with women, especially G.I. Joe. Transformers, we're going to talk about it. As we get into the mid-80s, things were, trucking along pretty well. He-Man, G.I. Joe, Transformers, they had sort of set the mold, the template for everything that followed after them, whereas you would create a toy line, and then while getting an animation commercial essentially together, you would pump out coloring books, comic books, anything you could just to generate interest. Women were always in these things, always, and heavily featured nevertheless. In cases like Thundercats, Ghostbusters, I mean, we had all the women from Thundercats. Janine, done to a fault, loved her. However, things started to turn as we got near the end of the decade. By the late 80s, however, we started to see a real turn in this pattern, whereas a lot of movies started to really get some toy lines under their belt. We're thinking Hook, we're thinking Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, we're thinking Batman. No women from these movies were being made. Some might have been considered for Wave 2, but most of them were a one-hit wonder. As we get into the 90s, there were definitely, still women, but it was getting more and more rare. And I think especially with Hasbro, and Hasbro is going to come up a lot in these series of posts. This all kind of came to a head in, I want to say, 1994, 1995. Per my opinion, and only mine. Basically what had happened is that Toy Biz was doing wild gangbusters cash and almost cultivating the adult collector with their X-Men toy line. They were adamant, after the failure of their first Storm figure, never to release another woman again. Despite the fact that fans were clamoring for Rogue, Psylocke, anyone, literally anyone. Toy Biz said no, no, no. And Brian Cunningham of Wizard Magazine, the editor there, and also the editor for Toy Fair years later, it became his personal campaign, and he really publicized this a lot. He talked about it a lot every month, was publicly shaming Toy Biz and getting them on the record saying, female figures don't sell, we're never doing any. And he basically went and said, nerds, do your worst. And this was before the internet, and we did our worst. Toy Biz got the message and were so apologetic about it. They said, we're making minimum one woman per wave, often two. And you saw this especially near the tail end of the line. And likewise, through to Marvel Legends and through to Marvel Legends today under Hasbro. This also kind of coincided with the bad girl trend that was happening in comics, where you had Catwoman, She, Vampirella, a lot of characters who were, anti-heroes, and they were also, kind of getting collectibles, action figures. Again, thanks to Toy Biz, thanks to Spawn, thanks to Bad Girls, adult collectibles were, starting to grow in their infancy. So the girl action figure became its own thing. For a little while, it was really like, specifically what people were buying. And to this day, some people still are. So that takes us to today. Things are looking a lot sunnier. We're seeing every woman in every franchise being made with aplomb. It's, it's totally fine. We're seeing some toy lines being rejiggered. We're seeing some be just outright re-released. We're seeing the fan community actually creating their own characters and, filling in slots where, Transformers and Star Wars failed back in the day. So it's really, a better place to be. But that said, I always have a final verdict at the end of my out of MIA 80s ladies. So we're going to be seeing what was and what is. And likewise, we're going to be breaking this down into almost two camps going forward. So there's going to be what we know, which is that there was prototypes, there were at least information about, a female figure proposal, prototype, something. The other camp has just never made the cut. There are so many other characters that probably should have gotten made, and there's zero evidence that they ever were. So we're going to take a look at that going forward, and I hope you are primed. You're ready? I'm ready. I'm looking forward to it, and I hope you stick along for the journey. Talk soon.